Right, so here's another good one. All week long, I've been nothing to do but sit around, so I've been really working on coming with something more than just a lesson, but maybe a little bit. And so over the week, I've been inputting my information into my computer. I had it all staged out. Our power went out this morning, and I never did. So we're going to go from the ear, all right, from my memory, which is not the greatest in the world. Okay. So you're going to bear with me a little bit. But when I started a couple months ago, and I have these times when I get locked in on certain things in the scriptures, and I started looking at remembering. Zakhor. Zakhor is the Hebrew word for remember. Okay? It's probably one of the words that we should remember the most. It has very definite meanings of it. You know, in the Hebrew language is an action language. I hope everybody understands it. Our English language, the way we think is totally abstract. Okay, we look at things for what they look like. Think about your lives and think about how we define things. So like the example that our brother Brad always used was if you showed a pencil to somebody and you say, what is that? And they look at it and say, it's yellow, it's got a brown thing on the end to erase, and it's got, in fact, I did this yesterday. And the guy says, oh, it's yellow and it's got lead in it and an eraser. Nope, but in Hebrew they would say it's something to write with, something to communicate with. It's an action. And so the total Hebrew language is all action. So when you look at a word remember, what's the first thing that you come to your mind? You're bringing something to your mind. Why? Did you forget it? You think the Creator, when he says, I remembered Noah, that he forgot him? Or when he said he remembered the people crying out in Egypt, that he remembered, that he had forgotten, that he had promised Abraham that they were going to be wandering around and being in captivity all that time for 400 years. Then all of a sudden he goes, oh, I remember this guy. He did. His is an action. And so I started looking at that word remembering and started looking at the Hebrew words. Zakhor is, the Hebrew language has 4 different things. It has a name for every letter has a name. It has a figure, you know, something that it looks like. It has a sound and it has a definition. 4 things. We have in the English language we have 2 things. We have a picture or an object or whatever, and the sound. There's no name for. I mean, we call it an A, but it's an A because it's shaped like an A or whatever it is. But I mean, an A is an A, and it's the first one in the alphabet, and it sounds like an A. So if you look at the car, it's a Zain, a Kaf, and a Resh. So there's 3 letters there that all have a name. And those 3 letters all have definitions. And they all have a shape. And the 4th and the 5th one is they all have a numerical value too, if you want to get into that. But the basics of it. So I had this, I'm sorry I'm going to have to cheat a little bit, but I can't remember all of this stuff because things start falling out of my ears after a while. Keep packing them in, they keep coming out. So a Zain could be looked at as a weapon. If you look at the ancient Hebrew, look at that letter, it could be a weapon or a tool, an agricultural tool, like a plow or what do they call them? They have in there like an axe and a hoe and a rake on them, one deal. They have a name for it, I think it's called. But anyway, it's a utensil that they can move to use, okay? And so in the modern Hebrew has definitions, and sometimes they don't coincide with what the original Hebrew that the letter stood for. So in the modern Hebrew, the Zain is a definition of spirit, substance, and struggle. And a lot of times they can have the same meaning and the opposite meaning on the same thing when you're looking at the Hebrew, the modern Hebrew. And the reason I'm going through this is that there's words in the Hebrew language that you can look up. Zakhor is one of them that you can look up, and you can find it spelled exactly the same way. Talking about Strong's definitions. It could have 3 different definitions or 3 different contextual meanings to it. So we have to, so when we're reading the scriptures, sometimes we get an English type of definition. I mean, our language definition, we get something that's abstract. We're not getting the action of it, okay? So the Zain in the ancient Hebrew, it could be a weapon, but it's more like a tool. Actually, a weapon is a tool, but it could be like a hoe or a rake or anything, something that they use in agriculture. And that's its name. Call it a weapon or a tool, a utensil. But it could be an axe, it could be a sword, it could be something to cut, something to pierce, or to arm yourself with it, okay? But it can also be something that you can use to plow the ground, to build it, to grow crops, that you can harvest and feed yourself with. Those are weapons too. It's weapons to keep you alive. If you look at the kaf is a palm wing, okay? And it's ancient Hebrew, it looks like that. So it's a palm leaf. It's to allow, to cover, to open, to spoon, to soil, the sole of a foot. And it could be when something happens, okay? So all of those definitions are actions. They're not abstract things. And of course the resh, it's the 3 letters is Zain, Kaf, Kaf, and the resh. It's the K-A-F, Kaf, Kaf. Okay, the resh is like the back of the head of a man, okay? It's the highest person, it's the most important, it's the beginning, it's the top of, it's the sum of, it's the supreme, and it's to consider. So when you're looking at these definitions, they're all something that they're not abstract, they're not pictures, they're actual things that we have to do. So when you're looking at that, when you're looking at these Hebrew words, we have to separate them out and try to separate when you look at Zakhor, you can get 3 different definitions for it, and they all have the same exact number of letters, all in Strong's, okay? It's confusing unless you go back to the root word that it came from. When you go back to the root word, you're going to get that definition. But somehow, in translations over the years, we've come to see some letters that have been added in the Hebrew alphabet. For instance, there's 22 letters in the original Hebrew, but today's modern Hebrew, I think, has about 28. They've added vowels, got an E, they already have the A, they put an E in, and sometimes they substitute that E for the A in a lot of areas, which change, and when they do that, they give a different definition of that word. If you looked at the spelling in the Hebrew, it's the same spelling, but when you look at it in the English, they've added letters to it. And I'm not trying to say that there's anything wrong. Everything the Creator wants you to know, no matter how bad man has tried to translate it and put it into something different, His message is there. And it's about the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Okay? So yesterday, I'll just bring this up real quick. I have a couple of, they're kind of like adopted, they're not kids, these are young men. They're not young anymore, they're in their 50s. But they're friends, and one of them has never had anything in his life that resembles somebody trying to teach him anything. No Christianity, nothing in it. He's just kind of lived off in his own little world, I guess. But anyway, so they were asking me, said, in the tribulation, at the end of the tribulation, when the dead rise in Christ and Yeshua, and then those that are in the Word come up and meet him in the clouds, he says, do all the people that died before that time, all the way back, do they get resurrected at that time? I would ask them, what do you think? John, what do you think?
I think yes.
What about those people that were in the rebellion when they came back with the bad
well, hold on, let's clarify the question again, because
okay.
I'm saying
I got you. Those people, I'm with you, the people that are paramount in there, Noah, Shem,
right,
Abraham, Jacob, the 12 tribes.
Those that have their faith in the Word, which is Yeshua,
right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get across to these people. I says, no, I says, there's people that won't be there, but the people that were in the Word. And I went to Revelation, I think it's 12:14 or 12:17. It says, those who have the testimony of Yahuwah and keep the covenants of Yahuwah and have the testimony of Yeshua are his people. That's the people that he's talking about in Revelation. Well, all of those people, Abraham, if you read in Hebrews, he was looking for a city that was not built by human hands. He was looking for the kingdom. And he had the picture of Yeshua's deliverance. Yeshua means Yahuwah delivers all the way through the scriptures. Okay? So did Jacob. Even though you don't see that in Bereshit, it doesn't say that they knew all of the covenants and commandments that came along in Exodus, in Leviticus, in Numbers, and in Deuteronomy, and into Joshua. All of those things were added on to what those people were. Abraham was reckoned for righteous because he listened and obeyed all the commands and teachings that Yahuwah gave him. But he was never given the Sabbath. He was never given Passover. He was not given those things because they didn't exist. If you look in the scriptures, the Sabbath is only mentioned one time, and that's the first verse of chapter 2 in the whole book of Genesis. Genesis is about building that group of people that we just talked about that will be in that kingdom, in that resurrection, that first resurrection. So anyway, I was trying to explain that to him because both of them have been listening to the one that says, well, that's when all of the people that believe in Jesus are going to be taken up and they're going to go up into heaven. And I says, you don't go up into heaven, you go up and then you come back down. So I says, where do you think the kingdom is? They said, the whole earth. I said, no. The kingdom is in the land. That's the kingdom itself in the land. So the kingdom is in that area that was given as promise to Abraham way back in chapter 15. I think it's chapter 15 of Genesis, that this land is going to go to your seed. When Israel went into the land, they were only given the land of Canaan to occupy. They weren't given all of that land. They were given the land of Canaan. And they were on that west of the Jordan, except for the 3 tribes that separated themselves and got permission to stay on the east side of the Jordan. So and they says, well, it says on the whole earth. So there's another word you start looking at, eretz, in Hebrew. Eretz means earth. It means land. it means dirt, it means property, anything that considered that you're standing on. Right here, this is Eretz, we're on the Eretz, but we're not in the land. So somewheres in the scriptures, if you actually read, and I had, if I had my papers, because I had it all laid out, and I can't remember exactly where it was at. But if you read certain verses, and they're talking about I'm pretty sure it's in either Isaiah, Jeremiah, Zechariah, Ezekiel, Zephaniah, and those Malachi, those things in there, you're going to see spots where it talks about when there's the return to when he comes back, okay? And it says, and the earth, he's going to bring fire down on the earth and destroy the whole earth. Well, he's not going to destroy the whole earth. He's talking about cleansing the land. Because there's people on the in the same context that's talking about people on the outside that, that are outside of that. So I was trying to explain to him, when the kingdom of heaven comes, there's still people all on the earth that still are going to be required to come up and make their offerings 3 times a year. Am I correct, John? Isn't that what the scripture says? And it says that if they don't, they're not going to get the latter rains or the early rains. They're not going to have the things they need to survive. So I said, you can't destroy the whole earth. He's not going to destroy the whole earth. He's concerned about that promised land that he gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the house of Israel. Does anybody would disagree with that?
Well, technicality at the end, heaven and earth pass away and a new heaven and
Right.
earth come. But yeah.
That's the very end.
Right.
Because there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, okay? Because everything here is going to be new at that
Right.
point. That's after the white throne judgment. So he says, well, what's the white throne judgment for? These people get taken out. And I said, well, there's still people left on the earth. There's still people in the land. And he's going to go through that. You have to read all of Revelation to find out what happened. After the 1,000 years, what does he say? Then you have the white throne judgment. You're going to have Satan released for a time. And how could he just go out? He's not going to go after those people that have been in that 1,000 years, those ones that were resurrected and those that were taken up with Yeshua. That's not who they're talking about. They're talking about the people that are left on the earth, because these people for 1,000 years are going to be the picture of who you have to be in the kingdom with the Creator. And there's going to be people that are going to change and come into that walk during that time. Would you agree? So, trying to explain this to him, they said, well, how come it says all the earth? So I was trying to get the picture of the word Eretz. And so we have to be, and I started thinking about myself, because I've read through the scriptures a couple of times, okay? And I go back and read it, and I go, yeah, you know what? Now that makes sense. Because you have to have that, I know a lot of you in here do that. I know I've had discussions, and they read it and read it and read it. They come to understand it because he reveals to you what it means. You start keeping things in the context of what is being put in there. You know, we have all kinds of things, just like the calling of the tribes. If you look at Numbers 10, I think it is. I think that's Numbers 10, isn't it? Where, well, I think it describes how they moved the camp. I don't know if it's 10 or someplace. It's very specific how they moved that tabernacle, how that camp was. You have a lineup, you have the first group of people. What is it? Yehuda. Who's on the first front? Yehuda? When you call them
Zebulun and Issachar?
Yeah, okay, so you have that line is the very front line. Then you have the people that are bringing the tabernacle, and then you have another row of people, and then you have the people that are bringing the contents. Then you have another group of people, and then you have the tail end, and they're moving across the desert. Can you imagine 1 million people with all those kids and all those goats and all of that stuff, and they're going across the desert? It's a wonder that some of those kings didn't die of a heart attack when they looked down in the valleys and seen these people coming for miles and miles and miles. Here come locusts. So getting the right definitions and keeping it in context. I'm not talking about changing the context. We have to keep everything in context. If it's not in context, then it's just a pretext, okay?
I think too, another point to make, John, is the immediate context has to fit a whole context of Scripture, from in the beginning to the Amen Revelation.
Amen. You're absolutely right. And that's something that we have to remember. Because when I was talking to those two gentlemen, we were sitting on the couch there and talking, and I says, you have to understand the Old Testament. Have you ever read the Old Testament? Well, one guy said, well, no, but I read, he says, I read most of the New Testament. I said, but the New Testament is meaningless unless you understand what the Old Testament is. Because it's the same context all the way through. When David, a couple of weeks ago, when David, I told you David was going to teach, and I said, I'll bet you're going to hear about the kingdom. Because that's his power, because it's all about the kingdom.
I kind of hate to do this to you, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh yeah.
I want to get you to go on a little bit of a rabbit trail here. In order to understand the full context of the Scripture, you need to think about why the heaven and the earth was even created. And I've heard you talk a couple of times about the first verse or two in Scripture, and I think that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? I mean, we're just watching that whole story play out from what he did from the very beginning. And he made the earth come up out of the water, but then there was a special part of that earth that I think is just a picture of the kingdom that's coming all the way down, where he dwells with his people. And I think you see that theme all the way through Scripture.
Well, in Isaiah 46, 10, 15, somewhere in there, it says that he reveals the end in the beginning, or he shows you, or he reveals the end in the beginning. He shows you the very end in the beginning. And what was in the beginning? Was the garden with the Creator living within, within man, amongst them, in him, as part of him. Which brings me to I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about image, in our image and likeness. And I said, look around the room and see who looks like you. And it's not, see, there's this action in there, this action that's in their image and likeness. When you look up the definitions on those words, you're going to see it's about the essence. It's about his thoughts. It's about his heart. It's about how he thinks, how he moves. And you can see a broken heart there too. Because his creation, although he created them to do what's happening, they broke his heart, because now he's looking for a people that will love him the way that he loves his people. He hasn't found that yet, okay? But he will. Okay. So anyway, when we look at that, his essence, we think about that. So when we're remembering, and you remember his name, when I started out about remembering the car, when we're remembering, he says in Malachi, he says, those that speak my name, I am writing a book of remembrance. Those that remember my name, I'm writing a book of remembrance, okay? Remembering his name doesn't mean what I said, John, I remember the Creator. Everybody in here remembers that they heard of the Creator, whatever they've been called. Jehovah, God, Elohim, Allah, which is a short name for Elohim, Yahuwah, Yahweh. Whatever they've heard his name, right? And they remember it. Ask the Jehovah Witness. They remember his name, Jehovah, right? Although they can never find it in Hebrew language. But remembering that name means to mimic his essence. when he wants you to remember, what are those people doing? They're remembering his name, and they're calling on his name, and they're talking about his name, and they're doing what his name represents. That's what he's talking about when he says a book of remembrance of those that speak my name and remember my name. They're remembering my name, and they're doing the things that he wants. Now, I'm not saying because I remember his name that I'm doing all those things. Don't get me wrong. I don't think anybody on the face of the earth is doing what he expects his people to do. Yeshua was the only one, and that was myself and him in the flesh.
And spinning off of what you just said, Yeshua being the only one, what came to mind is what he said in the upper room. Do this in remembrance of me.
Right.
Yep.
And when you read remembering in Greek, the definition of Greek, try to put the remembrance. When you see something in the New Testament, try to put it in the Hebrew instead of into the Greek, because the Greek is an abstract thing.
Right.
Okay. So when I'm saying we are made in his image and essence or likeness, that's what those words come out to be, as essence and likeness. But that image is him. It's his inner parts. It's his covenants, it's the commandments, it's his teaching and instructions. It's the Torah that Moses wrote in Deuteronomy. He recounted everything that happened from the time that they left Egypt. Every law that was made, every commandment, every covenant was put in that Torah of Moses. And we hear about that. Remember the Torah of Moses. In fact, Malachi, the very last thing, it's the very last book in the Old Testament, or the first writings, or however you want to call it. The very last part of it says, remember, in chapter 4, it says, remember the Torah of Moses. So if we're being prepared for the end times, which we don't know when that's coming. See, now there's a lot of stuff in the world that's coming that looks like it's going to happen, okay? I really think it's going to be a while, but I'm not a predictor. And I read that. A lot of things are going to happen. Like I told those, one of them remembered something I said, but there has to be a great ingathering of people. And the people that are gathered in are his house, children of Israel, just like you, all of us in here, that are part of his family, the house of Israel. But it has to be in such numbers and such quantities that everybody knows it's happening. And from that group of people at that time will be a falling away. That's when when that happens, then it's not important. And, we're not all over the world yet, as far as falling away. So, just trying to keep these things into my brain, and as they pop in and out. Like I really did have some notes, but you see, these are my notes that are written on one side and this side and that side and this side, and part of it's upside down and so on. And so when I told Carol, I said, man, I am lost. I said, the power's not on. I can't even print this out. How am I going to do this? And she says, well, I think those 2 papers you got enough to keep you busy for 2 days. If you don't shut up, just keep talking. So I'll just keep talking. But anyway, so in Malachi, it talks about remembrance, and then it also talks about the Torah of Moses, and these are important things. The remembering of his name. If you remember, the Torah of Moses is all about everything that he taught him. Everything that he taught, every lesson. When we look at the lessons, what was the lessons of the people that of Korah when he decided that he should be the same as Aaron and Moses? Okay? So there was a group of people that were taken out. And it's strange because the family line that he came from, Korah, has a slot in there, way up there, that says, let the aggression, the sign that he was in, the Gershon aggressions, let them live forever. But yet Korah was one of the major people. He was like a cousin of Moses. So he covers everything in there. He took out all of Korah's people but the rest of that family was left alone, the rest of that lineage was left alone. So his plan is perfect the way he plans it, but those are something that we need to know because those were lessons. It's just like going into the land and the one, oddly enough, both of their names are Mike. So little Mike said to big Mike, well, as all going into the land was about is genocide. And I says, yeah, and today it is. But I think when the Creator was looking at it, it was cleansing something that was not his, something that was not clean, something that was not, I don't want to use the word kosher, but something that was not
In covenant.
set apart.
Something that was not in covenant.
Right,
With
okay, that's good. That's what he was cleaning the land. You gotta remember who created those people and who brought them out. So we have to look at that in our lives too. Eric,
So.
is that right, Eric?
Yeah, yep. So you're bringing to my mind, right, like when you want to plant a new crop in the field, you have to burn the field because you need to kill off the old crop, right? So you'll have a fresh, clean slate. And respect to a lot of people looking upon maybe them going into the land and having to take out the current inhabitants, right? I think that's due to a lack of understanding of holiness and how serious God takes
Right.
his covenant. You know, we're going to come to, you know, we're coming to a point, right, that the more set apart we get, the closer to God we get, or the more set apart we get, you know.
If he wanted everything to be perfect, he wouldn't have had a Laban.
Yeah.
He would have had an Abraham, an Isaac, and Jacob. Those other people wouldn't have existed. They'd have picked up a couple of wives along the way that didn't have a dad that had idols in their family and raised them in an idolatrous place. There's a reason that happened. Those things were supposed to happen. Look at how how the children came about in that grouping of four ladies. And look at who the first one, the one that he loved. And how does it say in Deuteronomy, if a man marries a woman and she has a son, and they have a son, they cannot treat that son better than their own son. They have to treat him as the first son, and there's rules for that. And so we have to remember that that's his way. There's a special way, and I think the adopted son is supposed to get twice the inheritance. So, yeah, I told Randy that one time, and I said, don't worry about it, you ain't getting anything, because I said, I'm spending your inheritance, man. So, but anyway, get nice off. But anyway, when we look at what he was doing, he wasn't genocide, he was cleaning the land. He wouldn't have, Esau wouldn't have got its own country, Edom. He'd have just let him run around out there in the forest with the camels and the bears and let him do his thing. But no, he gave him 12 chieftains, he gave him land, he gave him an area, told Israel to stay away from it, don't go there. Moab and Ammon, both got properties. Midian, all of those people are related. They're one big happy family, and that's what's going on over there today, is they're still feuding over the land. Would anybody disagree with that?
No.
It's going there. And unfortunately, Yehuda was put in there for a reason. And it's amazing how many people hate Judah. And I just talked to a couple of Messianics. They're just nothing but genocidists. They're wiping out the Palestinians, you know. And I'm going, well, you must be watching CNN. But anyway, it's amazing how people are. Years ago, I was talking to a guy. I said something about a friend of mine that was Jewish, and he goes, I hate those Jews. Did you ever read Mein Kampf, man? If you ever read that, you kill every Jew you see. Because I don't want to read it. Okay. And I don't understand that.
People are not rightly dividing the word.
That's right. Well, I know they're not in the word
You
at
know,
all.
when Paul said, not all Israel is Israel, it's like a chapter, or 2 chapters later, he says, all Israel will be saved.
Right.
Not all Israel is the covenant Israel. Not everybody's,
Right.
you know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand that.
But then all the Israel that is gonna be saved is all the covenant, even those that are adopted and grafted in,
Right.
however you wanna say it.
Yeah. Well, thinking of all Israel, how many divisions is in there? Or I'm sorry, thinking of Israel, which are Hebrews, how many Hebrews are in there? When it talks about the Hebrews in Egypt, it wasn't just the Israelites that were the Hebrews.
Right.
There's the Midianites, there was the, and then, what's his name? Ishmael was there. He's from Adam. He would have been, or from Abraham. He would have been, or from Aram. He would have been a Hebrew because wasn't Abraham the first Hebrew? He's the first one to cross over. What did he cross over to? He didn't cross over the line. He just crossed over to the covenants and commandments and teaching and instructions of just not being obedient, but the fact that he wanted to please the Creator. They said he obeyed. He didn't obey. He did it because he wanted the Creator, and he believed everything he said, and he followed it. 10 times he was tested, 10 times he passed. And the last one was getting Isaac on the altar, and he says, "Now I know you truly love me." Did you know that happened on the third day?
How about that?
Yeah, that's something. On day 3.
How about you don't see Isaac again until after?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't see Isaac until he sees his bride. You don't
Yep.
hear of Isaac's not in the scriptures until he sees
Yep.
his bride.
That's probably coincidence.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and on those camels coming with all that,
Yeah.
10 camels coming back. So anyway, anybody ever, how many of you know Brad Scott? I know a lot of you do. If you go on his website, his Wild Branch Ministry, look up his teaching on the 10 camels, okay? And if you haven't read it, read it. I mean, you can hoo-ha, but if you read it, I'm telling you, Brad was a very intelligent and deep thinker.
I'd like to add a YouTube channel. It's called God's Learning Channel. They've literally put every bit of content that he did, that's
Yeah,
recorded onto their channel. I would highly recommend going on to their channel.
But he's got some really good teachings, he really does. I mean, I met him in 2006. In fact, I was going to a prison up in Northern California, and I stopped in Yardley, and Monty Judah had brought Brad out there to it, and he says, "Hey, I want you to meet this Brad Scott." Sure. I went up there, I listened to Brad. After I listened to Brad, I was kind of like, I don't want to listen to Monty. I want to Not that I don't like Monty, don't get me wrong. But you kind of grow from one stage to another.
Yes.
But Brad Scott, and that was one of his teachings, is the thing about the 10 camels. What's his name?
Eliezer.
Huh?
Eliezer?
Yeah, going in with the 10 camels and all of the stuff on it. It's very good. Look it up, read it. And again, what Eric said too, almost all of his teachings, he's got one on the Bereshit, the Genesis. Started out with the first 4 chapters, I think it goes up to 5 chapters, or we started out with 3 and it's up to 4 or 5 chapters on the CDs. Most of his stuff is CDs, okay? And it really is, and you just listen to it. I used to listen to the stuff and fall asleep and wake up in the middle of the night, turn it on so I didn't want to miss anything, so I started over. Some of that stuff I could repeat it. But anyway, he's a very good teacher. So, and the point that John made, thinking about, you don't see Isaac. We all know that he was a pigeon type and shadow picture of Yeshua, okay? And there's so many of them in the scriptures that nobody even sees. They don't pay attention to it. The tabernacle is a picture of Yeshua, okay? And it's the most set apart place, the heart and mind of it, is a picture of the Creator, it's a picture of Yeshua. His family's around him, his family's in, he dwells in the midst of them. If you look in John on chapter 4, or verse 14 of the first chapter, verse 14, he says, "I come to dwell among, but if you really translate it, the among, translated, is in. He come to live in his people. And what did he say? If I'm in you, you're in me, and you're in the Father. So, it kind of give those things just build on it. He didn't come to dwell amongst them, he come to dwell in them. He wants to be in our hearts. And I get off on subjects. But anyway, I'm just about done. I'm getting dry mouth here. Shoot, how many things I missed. And I do apologize, but Edison doesn't listen to me. And there was no reason for it. And then they had 2 wrecks, one at that intersection with no lights, and then 2 intersections down, trying to figure out how a lady hit somebody. Somebody center punched a lady, and she ended up nose first in the dirt, parallel to the street. And she was going the other direction. And there was no dents in it, just the front end. It was crazy. All because Edison turned on our lights because they're afraid a line's gonna fall down and touch the car. I think. Anyway, the one thing that I really wanted to get is on Zakhor is that word for remember. You should really remember that word and remember that definition of what it is. Because it's not about just remembering something. It's about that action that was created by, he created the action. He created the people going into Israel. He created that, okay? He put him there. And that action is something that he's remembering because he made it happen. And he's not about remembering it, it's about making it come to what he said it would be. In 400 years, he was going to bring them out. Well, in 400 years, when he said that, I'm thinking when at the time of the burning bush, around that time is when he made his entry. And I think it's chapter 2 of Exodus. It says in the very last 2 verses, it says, and he remembered he heard the groaning of the people, and he remembered them. He didn't forget them. He remembered, okay, now I'm going to start bringing these people out. And then he had to work his way up to go through all of that to get them out of the land. Okay? 4th generation, 400 years. The unfortunate thing is, I'm trying to figure out why it was 430, but someday I'll figure that one out. But anyway, that word is important. It really is. It's probably the most important word you can remember other than his name is Zakhor, or to remember what that action is. It's a total action. He didn't just say, oh, I remember Noah. God dang it, I better dry up the land. Man, I better get the doves to see what else did he it was already in plan. I remembered him, and it happened. Exactly the way he planned it, exactly the way he wanted it. That was it. The remembrance is to reveal. He's revealing what he said would happen. It's another way to look at it.
Every time it's used with reference to God, him remembering,
Yeah.
he's doing something on behalf of his people.
Everything in that scripture is about action. When you see a picture of the tabernacle in the back of your scriptures, I don't have one in mind, but I've got a great big large print one that I can't carry around with me. But anyway, in the back it's got all these pictures of the land, all visual, all abstract. And when they showed the picture of the tabernacle, abstract. It's not about what that thing looked like, it's about the action that was going on there. Just look at, I'm sure it's Numbers 10 that tells you how they come out. And look at how the planning and how that thing is moved. It's like nobody ever sees that ark. The only one that sees it is the high priest. You don't see that ark. It's covered up, and then it's covered, and then it's carried by hand. Everything in that, every one of the utensils and the table and the menorah, altar of incense, the ark, it's all carried by hand. Men carried those. Could you imagine how much that ark weighed? I figured it out one time, because I figured out the shekels and all that stuff. But I know it cost about $6.5 billion to build the ark. or the
And he
tabernacle.
provided all the materials to do it.
Uh-huh.
And Yah provided all the materials
Yes,
to
he
do it
did.
before they left Egypt.
And guess what? Egypt gave it to them.
That's right.
So Egypt built it. That's kind of like they were the subcontractor. They were the financiers. But when you look at that, everything in your scriptures is like that. I mean, when you look at the King James, and I'm not knocking them because they all want to be, they want you to have a message. They want you to see what they're doing. They want you to, his message is there no matter. Man can't mess it up. Can't mess it up. It's there. You can dig it out. Even in the NIV, you can find it. Anyway, but you look at what's in there, it's all abstract things. Pictures. It's always about pictures of things. When I say a picture of Yeshua in there, I'm talking about an action that happens that makes it look like it. It's a moving picture, okay? I'll put it that way. The patterns that you see in there, the patterns and the pictures, those are all action things. And everything in that Bible is, everything in there is action. And the main thing is when they start showing you pictures, your mind wanders. And most of them are not correct. Nobody ever seen that part. And how many pictures do you see? Huh? And how come it's a bird wing?
Well, the high priest saw it.
Huh?
The high priest saw it.
The high priest did, I'm sorry. But I meant us kind of people. How many things out there have wings? And the one they always use is the bird wing. You know? The cherubim had 6 wings. The cherubim had 4 wings. She knows, she studies. And when I looked at it, I thought, me and David we used to travel a lot. Everybody, well, the people that don't know, me and David used to travel a lot. We drive up to Northern California, we went to the desert, to prisons, and so most of them are 3, 4, 5-hour trips. And then plus we're in the motel room later on. And then we're back in the prison, and then, so these conversations continue to go. I said, how come it's bird wings? I said, why couldn't it be a moth, a butterfly? And David goes, you know, John, I thought about that. Why don't you, and I said, how do you study that? The guy says, but think of what a butterfly looks like. You pinch its wings together and look at that little thing hanging around. It looks like a man on there without legs. I mean, it's got legs, but just think about it. And it can cover its head and a lot of it completely. And it could cover the ark and touch each other. It could have been a butterfly. But man can only think in wings as birds or being one body. So, I don't know, it's probably boring to some of you, but really, when we look at this scriptures and we look at our lives and we look what's around us and we look how we live in an abstract world. We have to see everything, we have to touch it. So if you want a car, you don't say, well, I gotta go buy me something for transportation to get around. You go, yeah, I'm gonna go out and buy me one of those Corvettes, and I'm gonna go home with a 454, and I'm gonna have 4 on the floor. We describe it, in colors and everything, cubic inches, but we never just tell anybody we just need it for transportation, because that's what it's for, to get us from here to there. Think about it. Our life is that way. You need to start thinking like the Hebrews, and especially when you open that scripture. When you start in Genesis, just think about what was going on when he was making those things happen. It's just read it, and it's like some people say, "Oh, that couldn't happen. Nobody could create the moon, all that in 7 days." Well, we don't know how long his days are. He's in a different time zone, I'm sure, and I'm sure his watch works different. So, when we're reading the scriptures, and we're today the way we're living, and I really do apologize for Edison, and I mean I'm blaming it on him. I had my stuff down, and I'm gonna put it together, and I'll get the whole thing for you one of these days when I'm teaching, and we'll make it happen. But we need to look at this as an action. It's a total action all the way through the scriptures, everything. We don't need a picture of Yeshua on that stake. nailed there, beating, beat up. We need to look at the action of it, what that represents. Think about it that way. When you start looking at that way, think what that represents. Think about being in that grave 3 days and coming out just like the scripture said. You don't think like that. Just think of those kind of actions. Think when you're looking, when you're going through Revelation and he's talking to 7 assemblies, all about actions and what they're doing. He knows who they are, he knows what they're doing, and he knows what they're not doing, and he tells them what they should be doing. And if they did it, if they do it, they're going to be counted among his people.
For me, it really reminds me of remembrance too is here. So like Oshima, like here is not passive, it means active.
Right.
We're always doing something, and I think a lot of people forget that. They just kind of like glaze over words, and that's from the Enlightenment period where we think of why. They never asked why. They were like, okay, I'm just gonna do it, and that's the faith. Like faith is doing something, and I think that's where. And then with the Bible, it's 4 ways always interpreted. You know,
Oh yeah, there's,
all
and they should all coincide with
And
each
they
other.
do.
Yes,
The pattern
if they don't coincide with each other,
Yeah.
then you've missed something that's not there. There's those 3 levels of understanding and they're in there. I mean, 4 levels, and they have to be in context with each other. And some of them you could be looking at rocks in one, and you could be looking at us today walking, you know, and saying, oh, that's good. They might be talking about stones, you know, that cornerstone or whatever it is. And so we look at it, look at the action of it, look at the action, the things that Yeshua did when he was with the woman at the well. It wasn't about the water. Was it? It was an action. He gave her, without ever saying it, all the information she needed to know to make up her mind that he was the Messiah. She's the first one I think he really revealed himself to. And so that was an action. And you could look at those 4 husbands and one you're not married to. You have 4 husbands and the 5th one is not married to. You could be looking at the 5 books of Torah as an example of those 5 men. She was living with their sheep. You know, what was going on there, she could have been through those things. But the one that she was with, the Torah of Moses, she wasn't connected to it. And so, just a thought. But anyway, just try to, when we're doing this, try to, sometimes I think I'm losing my mind over this stuff, but really, I start talking and I know I'm repetitious, but it's all about action. And we have to remember that Hebrew is about action. It's not about empty words. There's no empty words in there. There's no filler in there. And it's not always in sequence. Sometimes you can read along and then all of a sudden up here it's going to tell you something that happened back here. But it's in context with what's going on. It keeps it in context. Like when I was doing Judges, the first thing is about all the people that may got so far away from the Creator, and then it goes back to what happened with Joshua. Okay, so there you're here, and then all of a sudden they're taking you back to Joshua, how it ended up with him. They were showing you this is what he did, and look what they did. So we all studied that. All right, well, if that's, I think I've about wasted all of my breath and all of your time. I hope I haven't wasted your time. I hope you got something out of it. And I really do apologize because I can't remember everything. Like I said, I'm looking at these notes and I only hit about 3 things in there.
Stop apologizing, it was a good message.
Okay, well anyway, I want you guys to go out here and think that at least you learned something. Because I did. While I'm talking, I learned. It's time to
Prayer hearts receive blessing.